What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another UFC breakdown and predictions video. This time for UFC Vegas 92, we have returned to the Apex for the fights this weekend, and some good news. Dana White announced that he's going to be eliminating Apex Fight Night events in the new year, so I'm super excited about that. That is fantastic news for a fight fan, so I'm looking forward to that because we are coming off of UFC St. Louis, which was an awesome event. It was great to see on a fight night card a crowd be in the arena. It just gives more of a fight vibe. The energy's there, and it's just a way better experience, I'm sure, for the fighters as well as viewers at home. And for the people in the arena. So it's great to see. UFC St. Louis was a great card. Lots of action, awesome fights, and we did pretty well on our breakdowns and predictions. We went 9 for 12 on picks, and I'm hoping we can continue that this week at UFC Vegas 92. So let's get into those breakdowns. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you're new for more UFC content, and comment down below what you guys think of these specific matchups, what you think about the fight card as a whole, my picks. Doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. I want to hear your guys' take on these particular fights and picks. So make sure to drop some comments. Let's get into the breakdown. Now, starting off the night, we have a women's bout. Vanessa Demopoulos going up against Emily Ducote, and I am going to be picking Emily Ducote to win this fight. Reason being is she, in my opinion, is the better overall fighter, maybe minus the grappling exchanges, but Emily Ducote has a 92% takedown defense, and Demopoulos, I believe, has like somewhere around a 30% takedown accuracy. So in a fight that you would think Demopoulos needs to get to the ground to find success, I think it's going to be really difficult for her to find herself in that position against a fighter like Ducote. And in a primarily striking affair, I'm going to go with Ducote because she is the cleaner striker and she has that volume. In 3 of her 4 UFC fights, she has posted over 100 strikes, and I think the closest Demopoulos has gotten to that number in her UFC tenure is, I think, around 66, something like that. So like I said, for a fight that's going to be primarily on the feet, I can trust Ducote to be the cleaner striker and have more volume for the judges to score. Now, Demopoulos she is a dog. She's never going to give up on herself, and she's going to fight from the beginning all the way to the end of those 15 minutes. So you can never really count her out of a fight. We've seen that in her UFC career as well, but I am going to trust Emily Ducote to outstrike her on the feet, be cleaner on the feet, and just have way more volume for the judges to score. And that's my pick, Emily Ducote to defeat Vanessa Demopoulos to start off UFC Vegas 92. Now, next up, we have Alatengheili going up against Rodrigues, and this was kind of tricky for me to decide, but I ultimately landed on Alatengheili. He is a pretty good generalist. He's a decent fighter anywhere the fight will take place. He isn't afraid to mix in the wrestling, but you rarely see him do so. But I think in this specific fight, it will pay dividends, and I think that's a great path for him here. He doesn't mind exchanging strikes on the feet, though. He loves to swing hard. He'll plant his feet, throw those heavy strikes, and try to land on his opponent. His striking defense is pretty good, and he's quite durable as well. He's shown durability throughout his career also. So, and then on the Clayton Rodrigues side, you have a very energetic, exciting striker who has great hand speed, just great speed in general on the feet. This is his second fight at bantamweight. I think he was having trouble cutting the weight down to flyweight. So I guess if he didn't want to cut the weight or it's too hard for him, it makes sense. But I think he has a tough test here against Alatengheili. Clayton Rodrigues is going to be very dangerous in that first round. He does throw a lot of volume and he throws heavy early on. So he's going to be extremely dangerous and live in that first round. The thing is, though, even though he tries to keep up the pace throughout the rest of the fight, like the second and the third rounds, he does end up gassing. So if I'm Alatengheili, I put on my wrestling shoes early and I take the wind out of Clayton Rodrigues' sails early on and then mix in that striking later. Clayton has shown that he can get control on the ground, and I think Alatengheili will find the more success if he has a wrestling game plan in this matchup, because Clayton's just too dangerous, especially early on on the feet. So I think for the path of least resistance, Alatengheili should wrestle early. And if he wants to let his hands go in that second and third round, I think that is the better option than trying to stand and bang with a fighter like Clayton in that opening round. So I am going to go with Alatengheili to defeat Clayton Rodrigues. Let's move on to the next one. We have another women's bout in the strawweight division. It is Piera Rodrigues going up against Ariane Carnelossi. And this one was a little bit tricky for me because I'm trying to stop convincing myself on a specific side. I'm really looking at these fighters and I'm trying to pick the one that I genuinely believe has a path to victory. And unfortunately, it is Ariane Carnelossi in this specific matchup. And I say unfortunately because she's coming off of a 2-year layoff and back surgery from what I heard and what I've read up. And I really do not like that. If you guys have seen my previous breakdowns, I've had, I think, 3 so far on the channel prior to this one. I really don't like picking fighters when they are coming off of an extended period of time, an extended period like layoff. But in this fight, Piera Rodrigues struggles with the things that Ariane Carnelossi, with the things that she ends up doing. Like in the fights that I've watched from Piera Rodrigues, she struggles when she's on the back foot, when she's going up against somebody that pushes the pace and it just keeps pressuring her, stays in her face. Her opponents end up finding success that way. One specific fighter was Sam Hughes. Now, I know she ended up beating Sam Hughes, but the moments that Sam Hughes had success in that fight, it was pushing the pace and making Piera Rodrigues back up against the fence and just pushing that pace. Ariane Carnelossi is the epitome of pressure. As soon as the ref yells fight, she's going to be on the gas in your face. She doesn't care if she gets hit. She doesn't care what comes her way. She's going to be in your face. She's going to push Piera Rodrigues on her back foot. She's done it in basically all of her fights. Also, Piera Rodrigues can be controlled on the ground. We saw it in her most recent matchup, Jillian Robertson, who is more of jiu-jitsu, not so much like wrestling. I guess jiu-jitsu plays a big factor in like keeping your opponent down, but as soon as Jillian Robertson reversed positions on the ground in that first round, Piera Rodrigues could not get back to her feet. In the second round, Jillian Robertson got Piera Rodrigues down immediately and kept her there until she inevitably finished that fight. And Ariane Carnelossi, as you guys can see by the picture, and as you guys know, she is an incredibly strong, jacked woman that's going to be able to muscle her opponents into positions that she wants. So if Carnelossi lands those takedowns, if she gets Rodrigues to the mat, I really do not see Rodrigues getting back to her feet, and it's going to eat up that round. The fact that Carnelossi has that pressure as well is going to open up those takedowns also, because Rodrigues is going to be so focused on all those strikes. Carnelossi can dip down, grab a leg, get her down to the mat. And if that happens, I don't see Rodrigues getting back to her feet. Now, if I'm Piera Rodrigues, I'm looking at that Lupita Godinez fight. Jesus. That Carnelossi is coming off of 2 years ago. And Godinez had a perfect game plan. She mauled Carnelossi for the entire 15 minutes. Took her down, kept taking her down, keeping her there as much as possible, and putting in that work. So Rodrigues should have a wrestling game plan in this matchup to avoid that power from Carnelossi. But the problem is Rodrigues has also shown that she can't keep fighters on the ground, at least in the UFC. She had some success doing it in her debut against Kay Hansen, but it's Kay Hansen, not really UFC caliber. In her next fight, Sam Hughes, yes, she won that fight, and I understand it's bad examples if she defeated the person that I'm drawing examples from, but she took down Sam Hughes 5 times in that fight, and I think she only garnered about 1 minute of control time. Sam Hughes was able to work back to her feet almost immediately, all 5 of those times. And the lone time that she took down Jillian Robertson, she ended up giving up position, got swept, and then Jillian Robertson ended up on top. So Rodrigues she has solid takedowns, but she hasn't really shown that she can hold her opponents there. And I don't think she can do that to Carnelossi either. So that's kind of just my reasoning there. I'm unfortunately going to pick a woman that's coming off of a 2-year layoff and back surgery to defeat Piera Rodrigues. So hopefully we get this pick right. I'm going to be tripping out the entire time watching this fight, but I am going with Ariane Carnelossi in this matchup. Next up, we got a middleweight bout. Abus Magomedov going up against Warlley Alves, and this is one of those typical UFC matchups. And what I mean by that is we have an exciting style fighter in Abus Magomedov that's been struggling, and the UFC does not want to get rid of him because he has that exciting style that's appealing for viewers at home and for viewers in general. He's got that power, he's got that beautiful striking style that people love watching, and that's why they want to keep him around. So they're putting him up against somebody like Warlley Alves, who isn't better anywhere this fight goes. Maybe in the grappling, but Abus Magomedov, he's just the better fighter basically everywhere this will take place. In all facets, I should say. Abus Magomedov was highly touted to come into the UFC and make some noise in the middleweight division, but the problem was he started off great. He came in and I believe knocked out Dustin Stoltzfus in like 20 seconds with a beautiful up kick that wobbled Stoltzfus, and then he ended up KOing him. So that looked fantastic. The problem is the UFC kind of pushed him a little too early. They put him up against Sean Strickland in his next fight, and Sean Strickland broke Abus Magomedov in that second round. Abus was finding success on the feet in that first round, but he kind of wilted. I don't know if he looked like he gassed out completely, and he just got bullied by Sean Strickland. His next fight after that, he goes up against Caio Borralho, and he got defeated by unanimous decision. So the thing is, you can't really fault him for those two losses, in my opinion. Sean Strickland went on to become the middleweight champion after that fight. Caio Borralho is running through that division. I think he's undefeated in the UFC right now, and he's about to go take on his next step is probably a top 5 fighter in this division, let's be honest. So you can't really fault him for those two. Warlley Alves is not even close to the level of those two fighters, and we just saw him suffer a first-round KO loss to Ikram Aliskerov, who's probably getting the same treatment that Abus Magomedov is getting right now. He's getting an opponent that it should be an easy win. Now, if Warlley Alves somehow survives that first-round onslaught from Abus, I can see Abus kind of like slowing down, maybe getting broken a little bit like in that Sean Strickland fight, but Strickland puts an incredible pace on his opponents, and I don't think Alves has that in him. Warlley Alves has that power, but I don't think he's going to be able to win this fight. It's just my opinion. I think they're setting up Abus for success here. I think he gets a first-round KO against Warlley Alves. Let's move on to the next one. We got another women's fight, this time in the women's bantamweight division, and we got Tamaris Vidal going up against Melissa Gatto. Now, Melissa Gatto is going up to the bantamweight division. She is a former women's flyweight, and she's taking this fight on short notice as well. Tamaris Vidal was supposed to originally take on Hailey Cowan, but Cowan pulled out. Melissa Gatto steps in, and I actually really like Melissa Gatto to defeat Vidal here. I have not been impressed with Tamaris Vidal so far. She doesn't really seem like a highly skilled fighter. She basically does everything based off of power. She sits there and waits and waits and waits to throw these big looping strikes to try to bomb on her opponent and try to hurt them. One thing I will give her, though, she has solid leg kicks. We saw that in her last fight against Montserrat Rendon. I think she landed up like almost 30 leg kicks, and they seemed to thoroughly affect her opponent in that fight. So she has solid leg kicks, but beyond that, everything else she does is just power-based, not too much technique. Even her takedowns, more just trying to power bomb through her opponent and get them down to the mat. Now, on the other side, you have Melissa Gatto, who is, I believe, a grappling specialist. I think that's her bread and butter. But throughout her UFC tenure, she's shown improvements in her striking. We saw in her fight with Ariane Lipski, she has fast hands. She's got good combinations. She has decent skills on the feet, and I think she is by far the better striker in this matchup. Now, I've heard a few analysts talk about Vidal and this Vidal and Gatto matchup, and they're saying that Gatto needs to find those takedowns. I really don't think she does. If Vidal doesn't land that big strike, she has really nothing to offer. Gatto is going to be the cleaner, faster striker with the combinations that are going to wow the audience, wow the judges. And even if this fight does get to the mat, we've seen Melissa Gatto in the past get taken down, but she never sits still. Even on her back, she constantly threatens submissions. She has the jiu-jitsu to probably sub Vidal as well. And I don't think Tamires Vidal is that great of a fighter. I think Melissa Gatto is by far the better fighter. And even on short notice, I think she gets this done. Tamires Vidal came in her UFC debut and defeated Ramona Pascual, and I don't really think Pascual is UFC caliber, and she kind of quit in that fight. I don't know how hard that knee felt. I probably would have quit after that knee as well, but it seemed like Pascual got the air knocked out of her and she kind of just gave up. And then in her last fight, Vidal was a huge favorite and she was supposed to defeat Rendon easily, and she got beat in that fight. I don't think she's that good. I think Melissa Gatto is miles ahead of her basically anywhere the fight goes. Maybe not in pure wrestling, but I can see Gatto landing those takedowns. Even if she gets taken down, I can see her threatening submissions constantly, working her way back to her feet if she doesn't get that sub, and I think she's just going to be the cleaner, faster striker. So give me Melissa Gatto to defeat Tamires Vidal here. Next up, we got two newcomers to the UFC. We have Umar Sy going up against, on Tapology, this guy's name is Tokkos, but when I was looking up his fights, I think his name is George Tokkos. So I put George Tokkos there. I could be completely wrong. May not even be the same dude, but I'm pretty sure it is. But we got two newcomers entering the UFC, and unfortunately, there isn't much tape I could find on these guys, but from what I was able to find and the things that I heard from other analysts is that Umar Sy is he's a very well-rounded fighter who's just an absolute powerhouse. I think the UFC really wanted to see him succeed and bring him from, I believe he's from KSW. He's had 3 fights, I believe, in the KSW regional scene, or promotion rather, I should say. But I think from what I've seen from both of these fighters specifically, I haven't seen much, but from what I've seen, Umar Sy is just the way better fighter, absolute powerhouse. And George Tokkos is taking this on like 3 days' notice. Umar Sy was originally supposed to take on Rodolfo Bellato. Bellato pulled out, and then they replaced him with Antonio Tricoli, I believe his name is. He also pulled out, and then 2 days ago on Tuesday, George Tokkos stepped in. So I don't know how prepared he's going to be. These two guys are UFC debuts, and we actually had a similar situation a couple of cards ago. So I do warn you guys, if you are betting on this specific matchup, just be careful, because similar scenario a couple weeks ago with James Lontop and Chris Taco Padilla. James Lontop was making his UFC debut, had a couple of fighters pull out, and then Chris Padilla steps in on like 3, 4, 5 days notice, who was also making his UFC debut, and Padilla ends up getting a first round submission victory. So this is like an eerily similar matchup, or scenario, I should say. So just be careful. But from what I've seen personally, I think Umar Sy gets this done pretty easily probably, and makes some noise in light heavyweight. He seems like he has the tools and the skill set to do so. So let's see how he does. But like I said, be careful. We literally just had almost an identical scenario with James Lontop and Chris Padilla. So be careful. But my pick is going to be Umar Sy. Next up, we got Victor Martinez going up against Tom Nolan in the lightweight division. This is another Abbas Magomedov situation for Tom Nolan. This is just personally what I think. Tom Nolan has that exciting, like wild striking. Sorry, Abbas Magomedov doesn't have wild striking. But what I mean by the similar situation is Tom Nolan is that exciting fighter that the UFC wants to have on their roster. So they're giving him somebody like Victor Martinez, which should be a layup for him and get back into that W column. We saw Tom Nolan go onto the Contender Series and get an emphatic round 1 knockout over Bogdan Grad. But then his UFC debut was awful. They put him up against Nicholas Mata, and he gets starched in that first round. He gets KO'd. The one thing is, though, Tom Nolan is, as high level of a striker as he is, he does not concern himself with his own safety. He throws caution to the wind when he goes through those striking exchanges. And if Nicholas Mata, despite him not being like an extreme talent, extremely high talent, whatever you want to call him. The one thing he does have is power. And unfortunately, Tom Nolan gave him the only opportunity he had to win, and that was by KO early on before he loses that power. So it's an unfortunate scenario for Tom Nolan, but he's only 24 years old. He's still very green in his career. He's bound to make some mistakes, and it's better that he makes the mistakes early rather than make a huge run and then get knocked out or start on a losing skid. He lost that 0 early. Not many fighters leave their career with a 0 in the loss column. He lost it early. He's only 24. I'm not ready to write him off just yet. Hopefully he polished up his defense a little bit. I know he has the striking offense. He's like 6'3" at lightweight, which is an incredible advantage in this division. And he's going up against somebody like Victor Martinez, who I don't think is going to be able to take him down. I don't think he's going to be able to get to him with that rangy 6'3" frame. It's going to be difficult to even take him down. Take down Tom Nolan, that is. And Victor Martinez is coming off of a year and a little bit layoff, and he's also coming off of a KO loss to Jordan Levitt. That is an atrocious KO loss. And if Jordan Levitt's able to knock you out and finish you, there is no doubt in my mind that Tom Nolan should get this KO victory. Hopefully, he can pull it off. I think he has that exciting style that'll bring eyes to the UFC. I believe he's from Australia, if I'm not mistaken, and I know the UFC likes to diversify in terms of like areas of the world, so it'll be nice for a young up-and-comer. I'm going to double-check where he's from, just so I'm not... Wait, that's Victor Martinez. Tom Nolan. Hold on, my computer's taking a little while. He is from, Toowoomba, Queensland, Australia. So, yeah, I think he's going to bring some eyes to there. We have a few fighters from that region, so it's going to be nice. I know the UFC probably wants to build him up, and I think this is a perfect fight for him to get back into that win column. I don't see where Victor Martinez wins this fight. Maybe if he gets some takedowns, but like I said, Tom Nolan has that lengthy 6'3" frame. It's going to be difficult to even get to him, never mind land a takedown. I think Tom Nolan gets the KO win here. Let's move on. Next up, we got another women's bout. We got a strawweight fight from Luana Pinheiro going up against Angela Hill. And this fight, I want to pick Angela Hill because she's that wily veteran. She puts up a good fight against... she could put up a good fight against anyone in this division. And don't let that 16-13 record fool you. She's had multiple split decisions go the wrong way against her in her UFC career. I believe, from what I remember, at least 4 of them that could have easily gone her way. Most people call them robberies. So let's just, for fun, write off those and make them, because they are split decisions. So some people out there saw it as a victory for Angela Hill. If she gets those split decisions, she now has a 20-9 record. So that is a huge difference from 16-13, right? So, but nevertheless, I am going to be picking against her. Even though she puts up she's a great striker, lots of volume. She's a tricky fight for a lot of people. She's also coming off a win over Denise Gomes, which is a fantastic win to have on your resume right now in this current stage of your career, especially at 39 years old. It's just, I actually just mentioned it. She's 39 years old now. So when is her age going to finally catch up to her? She hasn't really shown any signs of it yet, but it's going to eventually get there. It may not even be in this matchup, but I do like the side of Luana Pinheiro. Luana Pinheiro does end up fading in her fights, so if this was a 5-round fight for some reason, I couldn't see these two being a main event, but if it was a 5-round fight, I would probably lean the Angela Hill side, but because there's only 3 rounds to score, Luana Pinheiro, she throws with 100% intent. If you watch her fights, this girl does not lay back on any of her strikes. She is in your face, ready to clock you with either hand, with her feet, doesn't matter. She throws with 100% intent, and she wants to take your head off. We've seen that in her fights. She also has great judo, so when she does when she pressures her opponent forward and they have nowhere else to go because their back's up against the cage, they try to grab a hold of Pinheiro, and what she does is she grabs that headlock and judo throws them over her hip, puts that leg in the right spot to get that trip, and she does a fantastic job doing that. I can see her pulling that off here against Angela Hill. You see Luana Pinheiro's most recent fight against Ribas. She beat Ribas in those first 2 rounds, from what I remember. But then she got caught with a wheel kick because she was gassed. Ribas is an absolute dog, and she's never out of a fight, and ended up getting finished. There's no shame in that. Amanda Ribas is a savage. I love watching Amanda Ribas fight. She's dangerous. She's a great fighter, so it's not something that you have to be ashamed of. That's a great contender to lose to. Now, like I said, this is more of like an Angela Hill being 39 years old. When is it going to catch up to her? The fact it's not a 5-round fight, I think she has more of a 5-round fighting style because she has that cardio, and Pinheiro lacks that cardio. But because this is only 3 rounds, I can see Pinheiro winning the first 2. I think she's going to land the bigger shots, have the bigger moments in the fight that are going to sway the judges in her favor. And I just think that's how it plays out. Unfortunately, Father Time is undefeated. I can see Angela Hill finally start slowing down at 39 years old. And Pinheiro, like I said, I think she throws with 100% intent. I know I've said it like 3 times already, but I think she's going to have the bigger shots. She's going to have the bigger moments, and the judges are going to see that and probably sway this in her favor. She may slow down, and Angela Hill will maybe win like a volume-based 3rd round, but I don't think Angela Hill gets a late finish like Ribas did. I think Pinheiro banks that 1st and 2nd round with some big shots that land. I think she's going to find her way. Like I said, she's going to push Angela Hill with the pressure, and when Angela Hill tries to grab and clinch up, she's going to grab that head, sweep her, do a trip, use her judo to get Angela Hill to the ground, and then put some work in on the mat. So I will be going with Luana Pinheiro here to defeat the UFC veteran Angela Hill. Moving on, we got a exciting bantamweight fight, and here's another fighter moving up to the bantamweight division from flyweight. The last one was Melissa Gatto, and we got Adrian Yanez going up against Vinicius Salvador. Salvador is the one going up to bantamweight, another fighter that was struggling to cut the weight down to flyweight, similar to Clayton Rodrigues, who we broke down earlier. And I don't want to say necessarily this is like an Abbas Magomedov / Tom Nolan scenario for Adrian Yanez. I'm pretty sure he came out and said that his last name is pronounced Yanez. It's really difficult to say, but if that's his name, that's his name. But I think they're trying to set up Yanez with some success here. Vinicius Salvador isn't what we maybe originally thought he was going to be in the UFC. He has 14 wins on his record and 14 finishes to go along with those wins. We saw him in the Contender Series have a great knockout victory over Shannon Ross, and I say great because at the time it seemed good. Shannon Ross wasn't who we he wasn't who we thought he was going to turn out to be, because Shannon Ross came into the UFC and got knocked out by literally everybody. This guy, a gust of wind would knock him out. And so knowing what we know now, that Salvador beating him on the Contender Series really doesn't hold much weight. Salvador comes in against Victor Altamirano, loses his debut, shows a lack of urgency. Comes back, fights CJ Vergara maybe? Yes, same thing. He just lets the fight slip away from him. Yes, he has the flashy striking style. Yes, he's a little more rangier, but Adrian Yanez, despite being off of back-to-back losses as well, they were against the difference between competition from these two fighters here in their last 2 losses is like night and day. Salvador's last 2 losses is Victor Altamirano and CJ Vergara, I believe. Adrian Yanez's last 2 losses are Rob Font, okay, a contender in this division, and Jonathan Martinez, who just lost to Jose Aldo, yes, but he's also a contender in this division, and he will be in the future. So Adrian Yanez is just going to have way better boxing in this match, in this fight. I think he's just going to be the better overall fighter. And Vinicius Salvador, you can't trust this guy to step on the gas if he's behind. He hasn't shown any sense of urgency. Yes, he's dangerous. He's moving up to bantamweight though, because he doesn't want to cut that weight. So how is he going to be fighting with that extra weight on him? Was the weight cut the reason why he slowed down, doesn't have a sense of urgency? Or is it just his fighting style? How is he going to fight with this extra weight? I'm just not ready to write off Adrian Yanez yet. He's 30 years old now, so he's getting into his physical prime. Yes, he's on that 2-fight skid, but it's against way better opponents than Vinicius Salvador has ever seen in his life. Never mind recently fought. As long as Yanez can avoid and check those leg kicks, because that's obviously how Jonathan Martinez beat him in their last fight, I think he's going to just be the cleaner striker, the way better boxer. I think he's just going to be I think he's the better overall fighter in this matchup. Vinicius Salvador, in an interview during media week, I think said he's going to get a first-round knockout against Adrian Yanez. Good luck there, because Adrian is tough as hell. He will take a beating and not give up. I just don't see that happening. This is a great bounce-back spot for Adrian Yanez. I really hope he bounces back, because I am a big fan of his. I was a fan of Salvador's as well, but he's really not shaping out to be the fighter I thought he would. Anyway, that was a big rant just to say that I think Yanez is the better fighter in this matchup and should get it done. Next up, we got a welterweight bout. We got Themba Gorimbo going up against Ramiz Brahimaj. I don't know if it's Brahimaj or Brahimaj. I'm going to learn how to pronounce his name this weekend. But here we have another fighter coming off of a 2-year layoff, I believe. Let me double check before I spread false information. His last fight was against Michael Gilmore back in February 2022, so just over 2 years. Now, we got Ramiz Brahimaj. This guy has 10 career victories and 10 career submissions, okay? So this guy is clearly a grappler. That's probably going to be his game plan. But I don't think it's going to happen here against Themba Gorimbo. Themba Gorimbo has had 3 fights in the UFC, and yes, that first fight, he got submitted by AJ Fletcher. I believe it was by guillotine off of a takedown from Gorimbo. But AJ Fletcher was a decent prospect at the time, and Gorimbo he's learning on the job. Every single time he steps in that octagon, he is performing like a new fighter. He comes in after that, goes up against Takashi Sato, and just over 15 minutes just runs. He doesn't run through him, because if you run through somebody, you're finishing them. But he had a fantastic unanimous decision win over Sato, who is he's a good and experienced fighter. In his last fight, he goes up against Pete Rodrigues, flatlines the guy in 32 seconds. A fantastic victory. I think I've said great like 150 times in this fight, in this breakdown video, so I'm sorry about that, guys. I'm gonna work on these on my word selection. We're gonna get better as we go. Back to the fight. I think the UFC really loves Themba Gorimbo's story. If you guys probably already know it, this guy couldn't afford food. Colby Covington was giving him extra meals. The Rock bought him a place to stay while he's training. So I think the appreciation and gratitude is going to be there for Gorimbo. I think he's saying a lot of people invested their time, their money into me to make something of myself and find success here in the UFC. So I don't think he's going to squander that. I think this is a great spot for him. Beyond a Hail Mary submission, I don't think Brahimaj gets this win. He's 2-2 in the UFC, but his losses and wins aren't anything special. That Max Griffin fight was crazy. His ear was like hanging off. It was wild. Max Griffin's a wily veteran who puts up a good fight. He's a great measuring stick for this division, so I can't fault him too much for losing that fight. But he comes in, beats this guy named Sasha Palatnikov. Okay. Comes in and loses to Court McGee, who is another tough veteran. Like I said earlier, a nice test for somebody to see where their skill levels lie. But at that point of Court McGee's career, you should be beating him if you're going to be anything good. And then he defeats this Michael Gilmore guy who hasn't fought since and was 6-4 in his career, and now 6-5. So his losses haven't been impressive. His wins haven't been impressive. He's coming off of a 2-year and 3-month layoff, and everything is stacking against him. Unless Themba shoots a sloppy takedown, gets choked out like he did in that AJ Fletcher fight, I really do not see Brahimaj winning. I think Gorimbo is going to be the better striker. I think he's going to be the better wrestler. And I know I already said it, but beyond a Hail Mary submission from Ramiz, I do not see this playing in his favor. I'm taking Themba Gorimbo to win this fight. Now we move on to the co-main event. Now I have notes for all of these fighters, but it seems like I've been kind of winging it. I haven't really looked at any of my notes, and it seemed to work last week. We went 9-12, as I mentioned, at UFC St. Louis, so hopefully that trend continues. Now I have literally 0 notes here, so I'm closing up the book. I'm going to go off of the Tapology stuff I have here open on the second screen, and just off the mental. So we got Chaos Williams going up against Carlston Harris in this co-main event, and this is actually going to be a sweet fight. Chaos Williams is a dangerous, heavy striker that can put anybody away, and we got Carlston Harris on the other side, who has decent striking but is mainly going to look for that wrestling. Now I am going to be picking Chaos Williams to defeat Carlston Harris here, because similar to, I know this is going to sound funny comparing them to Vanessa Demopoulos and Emily Ducote, you guys can chirp me if you want, but Chaos Williams is going to be the better striker, the more powerful striker in this matchup. He's going to find the chin of Carlston Harris, and Carlston Harris is now 36 years old. So how is that chin going to hold up at that age, going up against somebody like going up against a power puncher like Chaos Williams? Also, similar to Emily Ducote, Chaos Williams has fantastic takedown defense. Now, it's not 92%, but it's at 80%. The only man to successfully take down Chaos Williams in the UFC is Michel Pereira, who is now up a weight class and was a massive welterweight. But nobody else was able to take him down. Maybe Carlston Harris can find a way to take him down. I don't see it happening. Chaos Williams has fantastic hips. He does a great job fending off those takedowns, and he's going to be the harder and better striker in this matchup. Like I said, Carlston Harris is going to want to wrestle. I don't think he's going to find success, and if this fight if he ends up getting stuck on the feet, I don't think he beats Chaos Williams. Now, a lot of people are going to look back at that Rolando Bedoya fight a year ago. On that Chaos Williams side. Bedoya came in on short notice and looked fantastic in that matchup. He arguably won that fight. I think he should have won that fight. Chaos Williams did not look good. Bedoya put an incredible pace on him. Williams did sneak away with that win. I don't think he should have won that fight. So a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, dude, Bedoya didn't end up being anything special. Bedoya's next fight, he went up against Kenan Song and ended up getting smoked over 15 minutes. So that's not a great look. But I'm not convinced that Chaos Williams is as good as his most recent performance. He's 30 years old now. He's entering his physical prime. Carlston Harris is 36 on the other side. If we look at Chaos Williams' previous fights before that, Randy Brown, split decision loss. He found the chin of Randy Brown, which is not easy to do because of Randy Brown's his in and out rangy style. Chaos Williams was able to find that chin, arguably won that fight. Beats Miguel Beza, which at the time he was 10-1, great prospect there. Beats Matthew Semmelsberger by unanimous decision. His second loss in the UFC was to Michel Pereira, who we see as an absolute savage, regardless of weight class. The guy is a savage, so nothing wrong with losing to Michel Pereira. But you look at his first 2 fights in the UFC, knocks out Alex Morono, who is typically durable. He's shown durability. Knocks him out in 27 seconds. Sophomore outing. Knocks out Abdul Razak Alassane in 30 seconds. This guy has power. And if he will find Carlston Harris' chin, and I think he's able to put him away. We look at the Carlston Harris side. 4-1 in the UFC, and the only man to defeat him in the UFC is Shavkat Rakhmonov. That's incredible. Good for Carlston Harris for stringing those 4 wins together, but in terms of like name value and difficulty, Chaos Williams has fought the better opponents. Carlston Harris comes in, Anaconda choke win over Christian Aguilera. Christian Aguilera hasn't fought since, not the greatest fighter. Beats Impa Kasanganay. That's a decent win. I'll give him that one. That's a decent win. But since then, Kasanganay has not fought in the UFC. So that's take that with a grain of salt. Loses to Rakhmonov. No shame there. Rakhmonov is still undefeated. And then he beats Jared Gooden by unanimous decision by taking him down 5 times and kind of not waiting out, but over 15 minutes, takes him down 5 times. Great win for him. Jared Gooden is a power puncher, so it's good that he had that wrestling game plan. I just don't think he's going to find that success against Chaos Williams. And then in his last fight, on his record, it shows up as a round 3 anaconda choke victory against Jeremiah Wells. But if you guys watch that fight, Jeremiah Wells took him down 1 time each round, basically. So he had 3 takedowns in that fight, and neither of them really did anything. Carlston Harris landed 5 strikes over the span of 12 minutes. Okay, because he was on his back the entire fight. Jeremiah Wells was smothering him. I think Wells only landed 18 strikes. Had a couple of submission attempts, but Wells gassed himself out, fell into that anaconda choke, and lost. Great. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from Carlston Harris because he didn't give up on himself. He fought through the adversity of being on his back for like 12 minutes of that fight, and he ended up winning. So good on him, but that was not a good look there. I don't think Chaos Williams comes in with that wrestling game plan whatsoever, but like I said, Chaos Williams has fantastic takedown defense to keep this standing. And if this is going to be standing, I trust the striking ability and the power from Chaos Williams over Carlston Harris. So give me Chaos Williams. 30 years old to 36. I don't usually, typically I like playing the age card, especially if the person is 35 years or older. But I think it plays a factor here. Chaos Williams is probably going to find that knockout blow against Carlston Harris. Let's move on to the main event. We have Edson Barboza going up against Lerone Murphy. And this one should not take too long to break down. Edson Barboza, if you guys are fight fans, you know who this man is. He's been in the UFC forever. This is going to be his 30th UFC appearance. This guy is the epitome of a UFC veteran, and I'm going to pick him to defeat Lerone Murphy. This is going to be Lerone Murphy's first loss in his career, and I think I think Barboza has the perfect style to do so. Let's talk about Lerone Murphy at first. So Lerone Murphy, 13-0-1. Clearly, he's a great fighter, but he doesn't really have that danger factor that we thought he was going to have coming into the UFC. Now, coming to the UFC, he had 5 KO victories over his 5 KO victories in 7 or... Okay, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 5 KO victories over 8 fights. So that's impressive. He had on the regional scene. That's what you should be doing before you get to the UFC. So good for him there. But we thought he was going to be more dangerous. He comes in UFC debut against Zubaira Tukhugov, and it's a draw. Tukhugov is a tough fighter. I don't care what people want to chirp him, but he's 20-6. He's clearly a good fighter. So that draw, not too bad, especially in a UFC debut. Comes back, Ricardo Ramos TKOs him in the first round. Since then, we've seen Ramos quits on himself. He's a quitter. He quits in his fights. We've seen it multiple times. So take that one with a grain of salt. Comes next fight. Goes up against a UFC veteran, Douglas Silva de Andrade, which actually is a solid win for him. But Douglas was 36 years old at the time. Lerone Murphy was 30, so in his prime, the physical prime. He's only 32 now, so he still is, but goes up against a UFC vet, passes the test, good unanimous decision win for him. Next fight, TKOs or knocks out Makwan Amirkhani. Good for you. A lot of people have done that. After that, split decision win over Gabriel Santos, which isn't too bad because Santos was 10-0 at the time, but Santos hasn't won a fight since. I think he's only had one fight after that and got knocked out by David Onama. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt as well. Comes in, defeats a dangerous fighter in Josh Kulabau, so, good on him for that one. But Edson Barboza, in terms of, skill level, Lerone Murphy has not seen anybody to the caliber of Edson Barboza. And I don't care that Edson Barboza is 38 years old. If you look at he's looking as dangerous as ever in his fights, dude. It's interesting too because you guys can believe me or not, it doesn't matter. I had him to defeat both of his last two opponents. I had him beat Billy. I had him in that Billy Q fight. I didn't think he was going to KO him with that beautifully placed knee, but I had him defeating Billy Quarantillo. In his last fight against Sadiq Youssef, I was not sold on Sadiq Youssef, and I picked Barboza. Now that first round, 10-8 for Sadiq Youssef. I don't know how Barboza ended up surviving that, but he did, and that's another reason why I really like him in this matchup. He got absolutely destroyed in that first round against Sadiq Youssef, but even at 38, did not quit. He did not just curl up and give up. He came back, pushed the pace more, wobbled Sadiq Youssef throughout that fight as well, and ended up pushing an incredible pace over that 25 minutes to end up beating Sadiq Youssef. Now going back to Lerone Murphy, the guy's never been in a main event, so we don't know how that pressure is going to get to him. He hasn't fought 5 rounds before, so we don't know how he's going to be in round 4 and round 5. He may have the cardio, but going up against somebody like Barboza, you better get that. If you haven't been in rounds 4 and 5, you better win those first 3 rounds, because Barboza is not going anywhere. Even at 38, the guy's a physical specimen. He's clearly in shape. He has good cardio. We just saw him overcome a crazy amount of adversity in that first round against Sadiq Youssef and keep coming forward, keep pushing the pace. He still seems to have that motivation. He doesn't give up. He could have easily just been like, dude, I'm 38. I just got absolutely mauled. Let me just get out of this early. If I lose to an up-and-comer like Sadiq Youssef, it's not that big of a deal. But he did not do that. He's like, dude, I'm not losing. I don't care how old I am. I don't care what stage of my career I'm at. I'm surviving this first round, and I'm going to beat this guy. I love to see that. Now, obviously, Lerone Murphy's undefeated. He could remain undefeated. But I think Barboza is by far the toughest opponent that he's ever fought. We haven't seen how he's going to do in that 4th and 5th round. And I just think Barboza is just overall the more dangerous fighter. He has the tools to KO Murphy. He has the tools to KO anybody. He has the tools to fight over 25 minutes. He's got that cardio. I'm not ready to let go of Edson Barboza. The guy is incredible. He's looked great in his last 2 fights, minus that first round against Sadiq Youssef. That was crazy. But I'm going to go with him to give Lerone Murphy, to take his O, and give him his first loss in his career. So I guess that's it. Now let's go over the picks on the night like we did at the end of our video last week, and hopefully we get the same result. Hopefully we just go for a perfect. Hopefully we get a perfect card here. But let's go ahead, talk about all the picks again. We got Emily Ducote to defeat Vanessa Demopoulos. I'm gonna say by unanimous decision. We go Alatengheili going up against Clayton Rodrigues. I'm going to pick Alatengheili probably by a decision. We get Ariane Carnelossi going up against Pinheiro Rodrigues, and I'm still going to stick with the Carnelossi pick. I want to say by decision because Rodrigues is a tough girl, so we'll just go with decision. I'm starting off the fight with 3 decision predictions. This is not going to be good. Next, we got Abus Magomedov. I'm going to go, we're picking Abus Magomedov first round KO over Warley Alves. I'm going to go Melissa Gatto to defeat Vidal by submission. I'm going to go Melissa Gatto by submission. We got Omar Sy going up against George Tokkos. I have no idea because I haven't really seen much from these two, but let's say Omar Sy by ground and pound TKO. We got Tom Nolan. I think he puts Victor Martinez away early. Give him first round KO for Tom Nolan. Luana Pinheiro, I think, will win a 29-28 unanimous decision victory, winning the first and second rounds of this fight against Angela Hill. Then we got Adrian Yanez going up against Vinicius Salvador. I'm picking Yanez. I don't know by how, though. I'm not 100% sure. Let's just go by KO. I'm going Adrian Yanez by a KO against Vinicius Salvador. Themba Gorimbo probably grinds out a... I don't know, man. I don't know what to expect from Brahimaj in his 2-year layoff. So give me Gorimbo by ground and pound TKO as well. I don't know what round, but I think it gets done. Chaos Williams by KO as well, maybe in the second round. Yeah, maybe in the second round. I can see it on the feet. KO and Carlson Herring's second round. KO for sure, though. That's my prediction. And the main event, I think Edson Barboza wins by the 25-minute unanimous decision win. I'm going with Edson Barboza. So there we have it, guys. Those are a recap of all my picks. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment down below whether you agree or disagree with me. It doesn't matter. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on these fights, on these matchups, and my picks. Thank you guys so much. I may see you in a post-weigh-in video if I see something during those weigh-ins that changed my mind on a pick. If not, I will see you in that recap video that I'll post up on Sunday. I hope you guys enjoy the fights. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.